All right, today we're diving into a pretty wild theory, one that completely reframes how we look at global politics. It suggests that the huge shifts we're all seeing, well, they aren't really political battles at all. Instead, it's more like a natural evolution, a massive global system just correcting its own course.
So, let's start with the central question the source material poses. What if all this political chaos we're living through isn't a fight to be won or lost? What if it's something more like a complex global machine, just naturally finding a new, more stable equilibrium? It's a heck of a thought. To even start to get our heads around this, the theory gives us a new lens to look through. It's called systemic evolution. And to see it in action, the source zeroes in on a key future event, a predicted and pivotal address from President Trump at Davos in 2026.
And here it is, the core concept, systemic evolution. The theory describes this giant, interconnected web of global power, finance, and government as a kind of global brain. And it argues that this brain is, right now, basically fixing itself. It's recalibrating for stability. So what we might see as a huge political shakeup is framed here as just an operational recalibration for the whole system. Now, according to this idea, huge shifts don't just happen out of the blue. They start with a single signal, a tremor that sets a totally new pattern in motion. And the source argues that this particular shift kicked off with one key event back in early 2024. So how does this signal spread? The mechanism is called Morphic Resonance. The idea is that once a pattern is set, it kind of carves a new groove, creating a path of least resistance. The more it's repeated, the easier it is for the entire system to just fall into that new habit, almost like that global brain is learning something new. And here is that first tremor. The source pinpoints Javier Milei's 2024 speech at Davos as the initial signal. The argument isn't that he was just giving a political speech. Nope. By championing free enterprise so aggressively, he introduced a brand new, resonant pattern that directly challenged the global consensus. And that signal was strong. According to this theory, when Milei said this, he wasn't just talking about Argentina. He was broadcasting a new frequency into the system, one that was about to resonate far, far beyond its starting point. So if Milei sent out the first signal, the source argues that the Trump-Vance administration became the primary amplifier. Think of it as the main node where the entire system started to recalibrate, but on a much, much larger scale.
Now this is crucial. The theory doesn't look at this administration through a typical political lens. Instead, it sees it as the actual mechanism the global brain is using to correct itself. It's all about prioritizing practical, on-the-ground stability over abstract ideas.
The source points to really specific policies as evidence of this operational shift. It highlights a laser focus on tangible outcomes, things like tech sovereignty, reindustrialization, a more efficient government, and border security. All of these are presented as pillars for a more stable system.
This quote from Vice President Vance really hits the nail on the head. The administration's focus on the American worker lines up perfectly with what the theory calls resonant governance, a government that adapts to real-world pressures to deliver concrete results.
Of course, politics is only one part of the whole global system. For a real shift to happen, the theory argues that other major forces, especially global finance, have to start vibrating on that same new frequency.
And this right here is a key test of the theory. The source claims the real proof is when the financial nervous system, global capital, starts moving in lockstep with the new political pattern. And as evidence, it points to recent statements from BlackRock's Larry Fink. So when a titan of the global financial establishment like Larry Fink starts talking about a crisis of legitimacy and the need to listen, the source interprets that as capital itself acknowledging the systemic pressure. It's a huge sign that the old way just isn't stable anymore and a new approach is needed. And this really shows the paradigm shift being described. It's a move away from those rigid, top-down models toward a much more adaptive system, one that's based on real-world feedback and practical outcomes, not just abstract theory.
The source really emphasizes this isn't just an American phenomenon. It points to similar patterns emerging, seemingly independently, all across Europe, from critiques of top-down policy in the Netherlands to sovereignty-focused moves in Hungary and Italy. It's all presented as evidence of a widespread recalibration.
So all of this builds to the source's final philosophical conclusion. And it's presented less as a political argument and more as an observation about a natural process, and it comes with an invitation on how to respond. The core thesis is put very simply.
The old way of forcing solutions from the top down has basically hit its limit. It's run its course. And now a new era of resonant governance, one that adapts and listens to the system's needs, is taking its place.
The source then gives us a choice. The first path is resistance, which it calls ego. This is all about holding on to the old, failing models, and trying to fight against the natural evolutionary flow of the system. And the alternative path is consciousness. Now, this isn't about just passively accepting change. It's about actively steering it. It's about working with the new currents to guide the system towards stability, rather than fighting a losing battle against them.
This brings us to the source's final and maybe most controversial point. It argues that engaging with this new political reality isn't about surrendering your principles. It's a pragmatic act of aligning with the system that is already changing, whether we like it or not.
And that brings us to our final thought. This theory presents our current moment as this brief, critical window to tune in to a new reality. It reframes the entire political landscape not as a fight to be won, but as a systemic signal to be understood. And it leaves us with a pretty deep question. In an era of such profound change, what does it truly mean to listen?